So the great political theorists in the past, whether it's Aristotle or Montesquieu or Jean-Jacques Rousseau, I mean, they had an idea that the appropriate political system depends on the size of a country. For small countries, to have more democracy is a wonderful idea. But when Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the most famous defender of democracy, was asked to advise the government of Poland, a large country, then he defended something that's much closer to what we would call political meritocracy. In the 19th century, John Stuart Mill, a liberal MP, he said educated people should have extra votes because they're more likely to make informed political judgments. Now, nobody could get away with making those claims, at least in public. Things changed after World War II. I think one reason is because the U.S. became so dominant, and when people thought of the opposite of the U.S., there wasn't room for nuance. It was either totalitarian Stalinism or fascist Nazism, and if you defended an alternative, you'd be lumped up in one of those. And there was very little room for nuance. I think that kind of dogma has remained in the West, and it's unfortunately.
My last question, coming back to the demonization of China, how is it going to be? Is it going to get any better anytime soon? And what can be done? I mean, sometimes it makes me feel a bit helpless.
Well, I think your show's great. I hope it gets more. I hope it gets more distribution. But sometimes we need to just forget about the West, right? I mean, even at my university, we train many public officials from countries like Laos and Rwanda and so on. They're much more and Bangladesh, and they're much more open to learning about the Chinese political system. They don't come in with these dogmas that are hard to shake. Of course, at the end of the day, China has to set a good model at home, and if it relies more on humane mechanisms, let's say Confucian style, rather than kind of repression, I think it would also set a better model, and others would be more willing to learn.
Thank you so much, Daniel Bell, Dean of the School of Political Science and Public Administration of Shandong University. It's truly been a very inspiring experience.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
I've been talking to Professor Daniel Bell from Shandong University, and that's it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. You've got The Point.
我爱你 I love you 我爱你 This might be the easiest way to say I love you, since there are so many other romantic expressions. No matter if you're a rookie
你好我的中文一点点
or a sophisticated learner.
我来北京5年了，我是本地人。
There is definitely something that will interest you. Check out Takeaway Chinese, a word that starts with 你好.
You're listening to CGTN Radio. Hear the difference. Experience the musical classics of the East. Mingle with the masters of Chinese music.
我的这种美召唤了女性。
因为蒙古民族被称为马背民族。
Music talks. Witness the sound of antiquity and modernity. CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.
Now the news. I'm Sui. China has denied claims by some countries that the Taiwan Strait is international waters. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin says such claims are an excuse to manipulate the Taiwan question and threaten China's sovereignty. He also says there's no such term as international waters in international marine law, and China exercises sovereignty over the Taiwan Strait. Archaeologists have unearthed 13,000 cultural relics from 6 sacrificial pits at Sanxingdui in southwestern China. They say the pits were from about 3,000 years ago. The discoveries include bronzewares, ivory, carbonized rice, bamboo, and other plants. Officials say the Sanxingdui ruins are a remnant of the Shu Kingdom dating back 5,000 years. It's considered one of the most significant ancient remains found in the 20th century. International flights departing from cities in China are increasing after a further relaxation of COVID-19 restrictions. Air China has just restarted a route from Chengdu to Kathmandu, Nepal, suspended for nearly a year. The airline company has increased the number of weekly flights between New York and Beijing starting this month. After flight reductions last September, it also obtained new flight quotas to Belarus and the United Arab Emirates. Meanwhile, China Southern Airlines has obtained new flight quotas to Kyrgyzstan. The company has also re-established flights to Tajikistan and Turkey. The United States is lifting one of its remaining COVID-19 restrictions, but it comes with risk. Benji Heyer has more.
Finally, liftoff for the travel industry. After months and years of disruption, one of the last remaining COVID restrictions in the US has been scrapped. Inbound passengers flying to the United States won't need to test negative for coronavirus prior to departure. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that because of the rollout of vaccines and treatments, the US can now afford to drop previously necessary measures. The impact of the pandemic, however, is still plain to see. Airline staff shortages due to outbreaks of COVID-19 and layoffs during the economic downturn have forced the cancellation of thousands of flights in recent months. The White House is aware of the risk that a rise in cases can still pose. And that potentially complicated situation means the CDC will reassess its decision in 90 days and stands ready to reinstate the rule if needed. But with testing regulations already dropped by other major economies, the UK, Germany, Canada, for example, the US will be hoping it can avoid reimposing those controls, especially with a busy summer season of travel ahead.
The rebranded McDonald's in Russia has opened its first 15 restaurants in Moscow and its suburbs. The restaurant's new name translates to delicious and that's it, and officials unveiled it at the location of the first McDonald's restaurant in the Soviet Union that opened in 1990. The general director of the new company says all of McDonald's 850 restaurants across Russia should reopen by the end of summer. The rebranded fast food network will retain all employees under equivalent terms for at least 2 years under a previous deal. McDonald's suspended its business in Russia in March after Russia launched a special military operation in Ukraine. The American food company announced its withdrawal last month and sold the assets to a former Russian licensee. A bipartisan group of U.S. senators say has agreed on a framework for potential legislation on gun safety. It includes support for state red flag laws and stricter background checks for firearms buyers under 21. It also targets a practice called straw purchases, in which people buy weapons for others could not pass a background check. Lawmakers announced the agreement a day after tens of thousands in Washington and other places across the United States rallied to demand legislation to curb gun violence. The United Nations says the overall situation in northern Ethiopia generally remains calm but unpredictable as humanitarian supplies continue to arrive in the conflict-affected Tigray region. The UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has released its latest report to update the humanitarian situation in northern Ethiopia. Between April the 1st and June 6th, more than 65,500 metric tons of food arrived in the Tigray region through 18 humanitarian convoys. Aid workers have distributed at least 14,700 tons of food to more than 900,000 people in the region since June the 1st. And that's the news. I'm Sui.
Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you from Beijing. I'm He Yang. Good to have you for this ride. Workers in the U.S. have quit their jobs in record numbers over the last year, and the phenomenon known as the Great Resignation doesn't appear to be slowing. Now there are signs that this wave may have hit academia as well. What happens when academics leave their teaching and research jobs in droves? And we're on a mission of starting your week with that motivational kick. Our most inspirational segment, Motivational Monday, is on its way. For today's program, I'm joined by Huang Shen and Josh Cotterill on the line. First on today's show, we've covered on the show the Great Resignation, the big quit or work quake in the U.S. labor market in the last couple of years. The numbers behind recent waves of Americans quitting their jobs are striking. From April to October last year, some 20 million employees have voluntarily left their jobs. Now, this trend may have hit academia too. A recent article from Nature, a world-leading science journal, has revealed that a wave of international researchers are leaving their research and teaching jobs and quitting academia for good. So, Huang Shen, give us the latest on this article and what stands out for you.
According to the article, it seems like many mid-career scientists are leaving academia for greener pastures in industry. One example is Christopher Jackson, who is a prominent geoscientist. He tweeted that he was leaving the University of Manchester, UK, on March 4th in order to working at a scientific consulting firm. He used the hashtag leaving academia hashtag just as one in a growing wave of researchers when announcing their resignations from higher education. There is even a Google document under this hashtag showing that around 400 scholars resigned within 20 days. Their research fields have even covered the fields of literature, history, philosophy, music, sociology, and so on. But the core fields are biology, including chemistry. What's more is medicine, together with computer and clinical psychology.
And some say that this trend has actually appeared even before the pandemic, but the pandemic certainly has intensified people's intention of leaving.
It is quite a big deal, and I think it's very interesting. Actually, I found myself to be in this predicament about 2 or 3 years ago when I was working at a university and I was preparing to do my PhD, and I really was thinking that this is the only thing that I'll ever be able to do. And also, my PhD subject was going to be in the humanities and social sciences, and this is actually one of the hotbeds for people kind of wondering what they're going to do. And it's actually an estimated 93% of graduate students in the US in the humanities and social sciences won't get on a tenure-track job, and still many assume that this is the only thing that they're only going to be able to do, get a professorship eventually or something like this. And I think one of the main issues with this is that you just really can't see any other option for yourself if you've been in academia for so long. And one of the reasons for this is because many of us have been in academia for a very long time. We go through our schooling, and then we will go to university. We may then get a master's degree. And by that point, you've been in academia for most of your life, right? Most of your conscious life anyway. And so if you then continue to do that into your later adult life, into your 30s, your 40s, if you're doing postgraduate study, doing research, a PhD, I can see why it's quite difficult. It's interesting that you mentioned the word Christopher, because there's also another very important Christopher that has written a book called Leaving Academia, which is, and this guy is called Christopher Catterim, and he earned a PhD in classics from the University of Virginia and was teaching at Tulane, and he left academia for a job, again, in a corporate consulting firm. It seems to be quite a similar story here with consulting, and I do wonder if consulting might be one of the few options that are available. I don't think this is so, but during his career, he went for more than 150 informal interviews and later interviewed 12 other professionals who had left higher education for diverse fields. And he drew on everything he learned from this experience and wrote this book, which is a real practical guide, actually. And I think that's in the title as well, Leaving Academia, Practical Guide. And he talks about why it's so difficult, but why so many people want to leave. And he's got these 6 Ds that he mentions. One of them is dread, and he says that this is confronting the prospect of not being an academic. Discern, exploring what you want out of life. Discovery, learning what careers are viable, basically what you can do outside of it. Decipher, translating your experience for new audiences. Develop, building new skills for the job you want. I think often people in academia feel as though possibly their skills are quite limited and they maybe don't have the hard skills that are necessary to get a job in another career. And also deploy, adapting to new professional environments. Again, quite difficult if you've been in academia for your whole life. So this may seem counter to the story that we're telling now about people leaving in droves, but actually I think that it shows why so many people in academia want to leave, because they get this feeling, overwhelming feeling often, maybe one-dimensional. And I don't think this is true at all, but this is how I felt. And I was quite concerned. And actually, to be fair to me and to other people that were working in academia, when you go to interviews, people look at you and they'll say, well, you're a teacher, or you've been doing this. And you think to yourself, no, I'm not at all. This is just what I've been doing. And as we know in life, we often get defined by our experience, and it may not always be so accurate.
And also, if the person who's hiring doesn't really know that much about academia, just like the general public don't really know much what exactly are the skills that are constantly honed when you're a researcher or on the lane of becoming a professor, that kind of thing. And I think there is a little bit of maybe worthwhile discussion about what an academic does, and also maybe sort of talk up a little bit what is special that somebody who's worked in the academic field for years uniquely can bring to the table. And just on a side note, some people were quite surprised to find out that there are all these chat groups on social media platforms with the titles such as "The Professor is Out" or something like that, and people go, oh my, we didn't really expect this to be happening. So it's interesting that I guess, with these different professions and considering how fast information travels and is shared on the internet, but there is still a lot of this the general public simply doesn't really know that much about. So could you put it in a thumbnail version and just kind of tell us, if you're an academic that's looking for a job, what is it about you that an average worker probably doesn't possess in skills?
There's so many skills. I think it's extremely broad, but maybe some of the hard skills that I think people working in academia have that can be applied to many, many careers. Of course, one of them is research and just the ability to process information both in a timely manner and in an incredibly efficient way, and then able to reproduce that information in a concise way, whether that's verbally or in written form. Usually both are the case. And if you've worked in academia or you've been studying for a very long time, probably you're well read and you're able to process that information in an incredibly concise and intelligent way a lot of the time. It may be not always the case, but this is what I have found. And these skills are valuable in most professions. I think the ability to process information and have extremely good communication skills. It may seem like a soft skill, but actually I think that it's a bit of a gray area. I think it's can also be considered a hard skill, communication, depending on the form of communication that you have. And of course, we see a lot of stories about academics going into consulting, and I do believe that a lot of professors who are experienced also do consulting as well as, are being an academic. And of course, if you get to that level, which many people do not, most people do not, getting a professorship at a renowned university, for example, some sort of Ivy League or Russell Group university, there's not that many people that are doing that job, right? And these guys will, of course, be publishing books, of course, and it depends on their field. If we're talking about social sciences, I think this is where it does get a little bit trickier, because there are possibly less hard skills that you're learning. And I say this as somebody that has a master's degree in a social science subject and has also taught this at university. I taught history for some time, and history is an interesting one because it's not an easy subject to study, nor is any other subject. They're all difficult in their own respect, but there's a lot of reading that's involved. And so many people would say to me, so are you going to be a teacher? And the other one that I would hear would be, are you going to work in a museum? And they were the only two things that anybody assumed that I would be able to do. And this really got me down, honestly, for quite a while, because I started to believe it. I started to think, maybe this is all I can do, but also that anxiety pushed me to want to leave it as fast as possible. So I can understand what's going on here, but actually I did have a lot of skills, and I do have that background in history and having to read and process a lot of information, specifically with books and different sources, finding primary, secondary sources, and getting all of that and putting it into a concise essay, for example, or a presentation has actually done me really well in, for example, the media. When I've worked in media, this has helped me a lot. I'm able to process information quickly and read articles quickly and get an idea and gain my own perspective on a story. And yeah, this for me has definitely helped a lot.
Right, certainly. And different subjects would vary a bit, I suppose. And there are these so-called core fields in science, which see academics leave in droves as well. And also, according to that Nature article, it said that it's a lot of the mid-career academics that are leaving right now. So, Ongshan, could you also give us some information or possible reasons why it is that these people who've worked so hard, publishing, studying, doing research, and also teaching, that's such a valuable job. When it comes to the influence of the pandemic, we always have the thought that the pandemic has sparked a widespread re-evaluation of your lifestyles, because the pandemic gives people a chance to think about what they want in their life and what about their future career prospects. So it seems like many academics, they share the same feeling, and they are thinking about, is there any more job opportunities for me besides staying in the Iron Tower to climb higher in this field and trying to be the top professor or the top expert in this particular field. And as Huiyang, you mentioned, many mid-career or early career scientists, they are the ones who are most dissatisfied with the current welfare as well as the work environment. We know that when we ask people why they want to quit their jobs, it's not hard to figure out the reasons if we draw on the findings from the new research, such as the new Pew Research Center survey. It finds that low pay, a lack of opportunities for advancement, and feeling disappreciated at work are the top reasons why Americans quit their jobs in 2021. And for another survey by the Flex Jobs, it found that employees are stuck in jobs they dislike and that 30% of them want to quit. And when it comes to the top reasons, that includes toxic company culture, low salary, poor management, lack of healthy work-life boundaries, not allowing remote work. So scientists, they are human beings. They are no exception. They share some pain points expressed by other people in the society. So for many mid-career researchers, they told Nature saying that they are facing a stage of scientific life that comes with particular challenges and uncertainties because they are not like the top-notch professors or scientists. They have their reputation already built quite solidly, and they still need to do a lot of other things to secure their job and trying to get more chances to climb higher. And for many of them, they are really worried about their future. They just said that their opportunities for career advancement sounds pretty gloomy, and they don't know how they can find new opportunities career-wise. And for many mid-career researchers, they often feel duties and administrative tasks that go beyond the lab. So for many researchers, they prefer to just stay in the lab and do what they are good at. Also, they want to further the research and development in their field. However, they have been overwhelmed by other chores when it related to the workplace politics, or there are some bureaucracy happened in the lab or in the institution that stop them from fully focus on their main job. And what's more is that when you think about the future job payment, welfare, these are the many important factors that can decide your decision. And when you see the industry, like the pharmaceutical industry, they are welcoming the AI wave, then you think maybe I can think outside the box. These are my new opportunity, because for the pharmaceutical companies, they want the medical experts, scientists. At the same time, they need the experts in AI technologies. So if you have the expertise in both fields or just in one field, you can just kind of walk outside of the campus and trying to join this industries or companies that need your expertise and the so-called cutting-edge technologies. So you may monetize your knowledge and your skills if you are just a mid or early career researcher and you find there's no way to get higher in your institution.
What you're saying here also kind of describes this, could it be called a revolving door of some sort of scheme of talent, like rotating? So basically, if they used to work in the public sector, so I suppose for a college or university, and bear in mind, because I've never worked in that field, but I've always been very envious of anybody who can enjoy summer vacation and winter vacation. Like ever since you graduated, you don't get that anymore. But I used to think, oh, that's kind of a plus for professors or the teaching staff. But at the moment, it doesn't seem to be that much of a reward that they consider. Now, if they go into the private sector, and if it pays so much more, also with the tremendous speed of development we see in tech and pharmaceutical, biotechnology, a lot of these fields, and then there are these new jobs emerging, and they need experts with special understanding of the latest cutting edge technology. And if an academic can fulfill that kind of job requirement, then I don't see any reasons why this person doesn't want to go for that job. It's a difficult no in that sense. So if it's somebody who's not happy with their current situation in their jobs, and here I quote one of these academics who left his teaching job, he said that his discontent festered in part owing to increasing teaching demands and pressure to win grants amid lip service level support during the COVID pandemic. So I guess a lot of people are sort of recalibrating, rethinking what they want to do with their life and what work would look like after all of this. So we're seeing that there's this shakeup even in academia, I suppose, that people are having some second thoughts about what they want to do in life. And it's kind of promising to see what people are doing. They're going after the opportunities they see best for themselves. And I don't see why or what should be there to stop them. I think people should be pursuing what they want to do. And here is actually something I would like to talk with you, Josh. All that being said, does this also mean a possible brain drain of academia, or maybe that's a conclusion too early to jump into?
It's difficult to say. In most countries, there are a shortage of teachers, not necessarily in higher education, but I do think that higher education is also always looking for the best talent and the best brains for the job. And the grass is always greener when you think about how good a career is. And of course, teaching, especially given the holidays, and in most countries, teachers are given pensions and they are supported by the state to some degree. But I personally, coming from a background of academia, and most of my family either work in higher education or are teachers, I think that I just don't blame them at all for leaving. And I think that we are in danger of having this brain drain, as you put it. And the only way to solve this really is to give more incentive to these brains to remain in the job. And I think that if you have better benefits, better salary, then you will attract better talent, just like you will in any other profession. I don't think this is any different at all. And I think that similarly to primary, secondary, high school education, it's a slightly different job in academia, but it's still education. And education is still a huge part of it. And I still think a lot of the same problems remain.
Yeah, and I've always seen education as something maybe similar to like the medical field. These are jobs a bit different from other jobs in the sense that they are communicating, either imparting knowledge to students, like for teachers, or healing people's ailments for doctors or other medical professionals in that sense. Then I think the most ideal situation is to get people who truly care about human beings, who want to be there, to have this connection with human beings, to do these kind of jobs, a bit different from some of the other jobs like a computer scientist or whatnot, in my opinion, that if these are people who truly love what they do and love to take care of people, and then you get the best doctors, teachers who are so important in our society. And what I've seen growing up sometimes is like when you get miserable people on the job and when they're interacting and potentially having such a long-lasting impact on the audience, who they treat, who they teach, and then that could just be such a terrible thing, leaving, a really negative imprint on people. So I think there's something very special about teaching and these academic jobs, and this points down to kind of some deeper issues in our society and systems to how to foster, nurture, and create talent who are best suited for their job and who are happy in doing it. And then ideally that will make this a positive reinforcement cycle instead of the vicious type that we talk about all the time. And also, if we may go a bit into the Chinese side of things, because in recent years, well, we don't really have the exact up-to-date data on this, but in the last 4 or 5 years or so, we've seen very successful business people who go back to campus, and sort of like a reverse trend of what we've seen in the Great Resignation in the academic field in the U.S. and some of the Western countries. So could you give us a quick analysis of what's going on here in China?
There are some examples, such as Dr. Fei Li, who left Google and became the co-director of Stanford's Human-Centered AI Institute in 2019. And another one is Li Lei, the former director of the AI lab of Chinese tech giant ByteDance, quitted to join the University of California, Santa Barbara in 2021. And the other one is Ma Weiying, former vice president of ByteDance, joined the Institute for AI Industry Research, Tsinghua University. Maybe for them, after being overwhelmed by the tight work schedules, and they accumulate enough amounts of wealth, and they have the choice and freedom to keep pursuing their academic belief. Because I think for the scientists who decide to change their career path, they have to be aware that there could be some financial uncertainties behind this trend, as so many people are trying to change a career. And also for the pharmaceutical companies or these so-called AI biotech companies, their goal is to monetize your expertise in a short term. If you cannot bring profits into the company, you know what? Your research team might be the first one to be affected.
So, yeah, what you're describing here is this revolving door. Like, you can hop into science research, or you can hop back into the private sector, and everybody's got their own set of factors that they'll consider and come up with, what is the one that's best for you, and academics are no different to that. You're listening to Roundtable. We're back after this break. How are you? What's on your mind? Let's have a heart-to-heart and Roundtable. Ask us anything. We'll help you answer it. Send a voice memo to EZFM Roundtable at foxmail.com. We'll play your question on Roundtable, then talk through it on the live show. Take care. We can't wait for Heart to Heart with you.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing.
Roundtable.
Roundtable. Connecting China and the world.
We bring you fun and timely discussions about what's affecting our lives everywhere, every day.
Tune in to Roundtable, where the East meets the West, and understanding is the goal.
Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Yang, joined by Huang Shen and Josh Cotterill on the line. Coming up, animals in a zoo in Nanjing City have garnered internet celebrity status. We take a look at how zoos struggle through the pandemic. And how are the animals doing? We will also ask an ethical question. Do zoos still have a place in today's society? And our special segment, Motivational Monday, coming your way. That's when we give you that adrenaline shot for the start of the week. Our podcast listeners can find us at Roundtable China on Apple Podcasts. And do you have a question for Roundtable's Heart to Heart segment? Please share it with us if you have a question that's been bothering you, and it could be answered on the show. Please send the voice memo or email to EZFM Roundtable at foxmail.com.